Welcome back, you guys. And before James Harden and Russell Westbrook would become two of the biggest stars in basketball, they were growing up together in the city of Los Angeles, California. They have a strong history together that goes back 20 years that makes for a pretty interesting story. Let's try to hit 2K likes on the first day on this, and let's talk about their story. Flashback to the year 1998 at the Challengers Boys and Girls Club in Los Angeles, California, where James Harden and Russell Westbrook would meet and become friends on and off the basketball court. At this time, Westbrook was 10 years old and Harden was 9. Russ wasn't the tallest kid, but he was very fast for his age. On the other hand, one of the directors of that Boys and Girls Club said that Harden had a methodical old man game. But when they had to play games, Russ and James made a promise to never be on the same team. That wouldn't be fair. Super teams weren't allowed. When James was in 8th grade and Russ was in 9th, they played against each other in a showcase with other top athletes in the area and put on a show that felt like something you'd see on TV. Westbrook and Harden were displaying what they were about to do on the next level by going back and forth hitting jumpers for multiple possessions. The man who set up the showcase said that, "You would have thought it was a Division I high school basketball game. The gym was just rocking." They played high school ball about 30 minutes away from each other. Westbrook went to Lou Zinger High School while James went to Artesia High School. Their paths to college basketball were somewhat similar, but at the same time very different. When Westbrook was a high school junior, he was only 5'9" and did not start throwing down dunks until he got a growth spurt in his senior year. Westbrook was so under the radar as a prospect that a lot of recruiting sites had no mention of Russ in their top 100 player boards. He did not play for a big-time AAU team, and he was never invited to any of those big-time basketball camps before his senior year. Russ was the definition of a late bloomer. James Harden was also a late bloomer, as he wasn't one of the top players as a freshman and sophomore, but he had a great junior year that pushed him towards the top of his high school class. Unfortunately, Russ and Harden never played each other in high school. Even though both of their high schools are pretty close, Westbrook and Harden were in two different high school leagues in the area, so they never matched up. Their paths nearly led them to the same college team. There's an interesting story of how Westbrook and Harden were nearly college teammates at Arizona State back in 2006. Herb Sendek, who was the head coach for Arizona State at the time, said that he was looking for players to recruit, and one of the players that Arizona State was looking at was Russell Westbrook. You gotta remember, around this time in April 2006, Westbrook wasn't one of these high schoolers getting several Division I offers. He was a late bloomer, and the only schools that were heavily recruiting him were Kent State and Creighton. Harden was the opposite. He was one of the elite recruits of his class in the next year. Arizona State brought Westbrook out on a visit, and they felt they had a good chance of bringing him in because they were on the West Coast and they were a team in the Pac-10 Conference. The player at Arizona State that was assigned to showing off the campus to Russ said that before Westbrook went back home, he told him that Arizona State was now number 1 on his list. The head coach said that they felt they made a great impression of their program and said Westbrook was very professional throughout the entire visit. But around a week after that visit, UCLA offered Westbrook a scholarship once they found out Jordan Farmar was declaring for the draft, and Russ committed. A lot of people in the city were hating on Russ. They thought that he was a good player, but not on the level to where he was ready for UCLA. But Harden was excited for Russ and knew how hard he worked to get to this point. That was his friend since he was in elementary school. 7 months after Westbrook's commitment to UCLA, Arizona State would get a commitment from James Harden. Does UCLA still offer Westbrook a scholarship if Farmar doesn't go to the NBA, or does Russ commit to Arizona State and play with Harden in his sophomore year? Now, of course, all of this assumes that Westbrook stays in school for his sophomore year, because if he left after his freshman, they wouldn't have played together. Harden is 1 year younger. What if Westbrook and Harden played college ball together at Arizona State for 1 year? In college, they both played at schools in the Pac-10 Conference, but Harden would get playing time immediately at Arizona State and establish himself as the team's best player. In Harden's freshman year, he averaged 18 points per game and was picked to the first team All-Conference. In Westbrook's freshman year, he was playing behind Darren Collison, got only 9 minutes per game, and was used as a defensive stopper and energy guy to give the backcourt a rest. With the help of Darren Collison being injured, Russ would break out as a lottery pick in his sophomore year. Westbrook would leave college for the NBA in 2008 after winning Pac-10 Defensive Player of the Year. Harden would stay for his sophomore year and declare for the 2009 draft. The obvious connection here is that they were drafted to the same team in back-to-back drafts. Westbrook was picked 4th and Harden was picked 3rd, but the one similar thing is they were both considered reaches by critics at the time. Russell and James would prove those draft critics wrong and help create some of the most iconic moments in OKC history along with Kevin Durant. But their time as teammates were short-lived and created one of the bigger what-if scenarios in NBA history. James Harden would turn down a contract extension from OKC before the start of the 2013 season, which helped facilitate the trade to Houston. Harden was ready for the challenge of being the primary ball handler and a leader of a team. 4 years later, and it would be Westbrook having to lead his team as the primary ball handler. In his first year as the main guy, he would be competing against his friend from the Boys and Girls Club for the most recognized individual award in pro basketball. Russ broke the record for most triple-doubles in a season, while Harden would become one of 5 players ever to average at least 25 points and average over 10 assists in a single season. The debate for the MVP was as heated as any basketball debate there was, and Harden felt he should have won last year's award, but these two are aware of the significance of what they're doing. Westbrook said this in an interview last year: "It's just a blessing for me to have people you know growing up in the NBA. It's something you don't take for granted, and friendships are something I don't take for granted. James is a good friend of mine, and I'm a good friend of his." And that's the story of Westbrook and Harden's 20-year connection. Really interesting how it goes back from them at the Boys and Girls Club in LA to their days in high school. They were almost college teammates at Arizona State. They were drafted to the same NBA team and were considered reaches at the time, and now they both have MVP trophies. I enjoyed doing research on this, and if you're still here watching, I appreciate it. I hope it was interesting to listen to. Next video might be on Mo Bamba, so be on the lookout for that.